Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We hope you're keeping very, very safe and well. Thank you as much for joining us as we provide you with instant reaction to Tottenham Hotspur beating West Ham United in a London derby by 2-0. I'll be honest and say at half-time wasn't quite sure the nature of what was going to be coming to our way on this great show. But join us, I'm joined by the brilliant broadcaster Russ Williams, the superb returning Richard Cracknell. You'll find out more about how Crack's managed to finally get into his studio in just a second. And also join us, long time since he's been on the show, we've got author of Fakeaway and Good Food, TV presenter for the BBC's Eat Well for Less. We've got the brilliant Chris Bavan back on Last Word on Spurs. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get into the show, just a bit of housekeeping as usual, that we are delighted to be sponsored by the Beavertown Corner Pin. That is the Beavertown, of course, bang opposite our South Stand. You can always grab a pint before or after the game. I know it was very, very busy there today. So make sure of always you check out Beavertown, beavertownbrewery.co.uk. Right, let's get down to business. Because I'll be honest with you, as I said at the intro of this show, I wasn't quite sure the nature of the game we're going to be talking about, given the way that first half was. But I tell you what, Russ, let's start the show with you. Christian Stellini, we all say that Christian Stellini's Spurs climbing up into fourth. It was a much better second half than the first. I'll be honest, I think we all had reservations.
Hang on, Rick. Sorry, how's the dog, Russ? Never mind Tottenham.
Well,
how's the
Crackers,
dog?
Thank you for asking. It is in the corner of the room on the floor at a terrible Achilles issue, and it's been into the vet and it can't move, but it's fine. So there you go. Thank you, Crackers. Honestly, I'm so made up. You've asked. Thank you.
The lack of sensitivity on this show from me, I must add. For those that for the listeners that are on audio, would have only understood half of this current context of the story. Obviously, we lost Ross's dog in the Man City game. I say we lost him; he lost a leg. But Russ
he came to say hello, and I foolishly dropped him on the floor. And he isn't a real dog, just to put people's minds at rest. He is a sort of plaster of Paris pottery thing, a gift, and I dropped him on the floor and the paw came off. That's all that happened, and I've had it fixed. Super glue is a beautiful thing.
I must have said, I thought we have animal welfare on the back of us in terms of what we might have said on that last show, had it all gone in a certain direction. But look, Russ, pleased to have you back on Last Word on Spurs. Let's dissect it with you. Look, it was a much better second half than the first, which has been a lot of the case of the season. But look, the football was a lot better in that second half, and it is a lot easier, as we've seen with Tottenham, when you do not go 2-0 down, as we've seen a number of times at half-time. So, Russ, give me your thoughts on the London derby win against West Ham.
Well, first and foremost, it's great because it really upsets them more than it elates us for some reason. They seem to think that we're their major rivals, which clearly we're not. Nice to see them in the bottom three, of course. Always a beautiful thing on a Sunday evening. Only joking, Hammers fans. I thought that the first half, it was two bang average football teams playing against each other. Me and you were chatting on WhatsApp, weren't we, Ricky, in the first half? And it was worrying the way that we were playing. There was holes all over the place. Midfield, we just didn't seem to be able to get hold of the ball. We've got Kane and Richarlison and Richie struggling to fit in at Spurs, as we all know. Maybe he will come good. But at the moment, he is a Brazilian who doesn't play like a Brazilian for me. And basically, Harry Kane is not getting the service and certainly didn't in the first half. The world's number one striker should be getting, and it's a familiar problem. Matthew asked a very good question there that's kind of just caught my eye. There is a story,
why were we late?
Matthew, it's coming up in just a minute, and don't get too excited. It won't get into next year's BAFTAs, but it is fairly amusing, okay? So second half, for some reason, we come out. I liken us to a golfer that, in the first half, we're missing 3-foot putts, one after the other. And then we come out in the second half and all of a sudden we're sinking 15, 20 footers a couple of times and it does the job. And, the mental attitude, the speed of play was a lot faster in the second half. Everyone stepped up to the plate, including the new superhero of our club. He's going to get his own song, I'm sure, Chicken Royale. Who does play like a Brazilian at the moment for us. Do we really need Pedro Porro? I don't know. But I just thought second half it was chalk and cheese, to use that tired old cliche. And fortunately, we were the cheese right there, and we got the 3 points. And we're in the top 4. How many times as Spurs fans over the years have we watched this? Oh, if we win this, we're in the top 4. We could go second or top if we win this game. And it's always, a terrible disappointment. So tonight, I feel, or this afternoon, late afternoon, early evening, that actually we got the job done. Heaven only knows what happens in the first half. I think we all saw it was pretty dire. But the second half was completely different, and we scored 2 goals, and West Ham really didn't offer much at all, apart from Bowen's shot in the first couple of minutes that hit the outside of the post. I mean, I never felt worried. And we all remember what Lanzini did to us, of course, don't we, with that spectacular equaliser a few years ago. So overall, I'm happy, but like everybody else who follows Spurs, it's great news, but we all know that we have got some holes in our squad, and at the moment we're not filling them, and even 1 or 2 of the players who were brought in to fill holes are not quite doing it either. But we're in the top 4. We've got to be happy in the FA Cup, in the Champions League, which I'm confident about. And so overall, I'm pretty positive, I must say.
Yeah, I agree. I am going to keep the man's grand entrance waiting, Crack, so you're going to have to hold on a second. I'm going to bring Chris in. Chris, it was a much improved performance from Spurs in the second half, and they do go out deserving winners. And as we said, they'll now see themselves moving into that top 4 for the first time, I should add, in 2023. We're going to obviously discuss the team lineup, because for me, there were a number of questionable selection decisions there. You'd argue the wing backs. I think rightly Richarlison starting that game. You can say it maybe paid off, because it did seem to fire Sonny up, as we've already seen once this season. But I think we can't get away from the fact, as Russ pointed to there, that West Ham were pretty poor, abject, if I'm being honest with you. So how much do you take into account the opposition we're playing, Chris, and also the way in which Spurs did transform the second half, given the first half showing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously West Ham are having a bad season, by their own standards, certainly in comparison to last season, which, they had a great season. But how many times have we seen, our opposition, particularly our rivals or these derby games where they may have been poor all season, but suddenly they become world class when they play us, but that didn't happen today, which was great. So yeah, I mean, they're not the team that they were last season by any stretch of the imagination, but still I think we did enough to sort of nullify them. Certainly in the first half, I think both teams sort of cancelled each other out, and then the second half we had more, we had another gear or 2 to go through, and that showed, that sort of golfing in quality, was there to see. But yeah, I must admit, I mean, I was confident on the one hand, but you can never be too confident as a Spurs fan, can you? But because you do, that Dr. Tottenham, or that teams suddenly find their, they find that extra sort of impetus against us, don't they? But that didn't happen today, thankfully. So yeah, and here we are, top 4. I mean, it's remarkable, isn't it? Because we've been so bad, haven't we? Barring the sort of City game, we've been so bad for so long, but we're still there. So maybe it's all going to work out in our favour. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Now, before Cracks, I ask you about the game. I think I can only start with how you managed to find us versus even discuss the bloody game. Do you want to give us an intro into how you even got into this show first?
Well, let me take you back to many, many years ago growing up, and I moved out of the East End and went to Romford, Collier Row to grow up. And it was all West Ham where I lived. Everybody I went to school with was West Ham. There was no Arsenal, and there was me and one other Tottenham lad. So this was in the early 80s, mid 80s, and they seemed to have an Indian sign over us, Rick. So I grew up, my formative years was growing up around West Ham, and they'd beat us nearly every time. It's always beat us. Cotty and McAvenny and always beat us. So I've grown up with this terrible, irrational hatred of West Ham, just because as I was a child, if you got me on one of them doctor's couches and said, tell me about your childhood, I'd be rocking backwards and forwards and going West Ham, West Ham, West Ham, West Ham, West Ham. That honestly, so that's come with me into adulthood. And Rick, I love beating them. I absolutely love beating them. They should be an irrelevance. They are an irrelevance, but I love beating them. Even though one of my best friends is a West Ham fan, I love beating them. So we've gone 2-0 up today, and I'm absolutely cock-a-hoop. So I've gone to put the chickens away because I've got a few chickens that live here with me now. 2 gone missing. So I've had to go and try and get those couple of chickens. And literally, I've taken the door off of its hinges to come into the studio, and the lock's failed. Because I've come into the room so full of it because we've beaten West Ham today and the lock's failed. I couldn't get in the room to start the show. So it's my fault that we're late. And it's all West Ham's fault. It's West Ham's fault, but we've beaten them 2-0 today. And I couldn't be happier. And Rick, honestly, I know West Ham, this is their cup final. And they've offered nothing today. And we've done them 2-0. Tottenham are all over the place and we're in the top 4. This is why we love football. It is nuts. Yeah. It is chaos. The great Danny Kelly once said to me, we all love football because it's not a science, because it is chaos. It is absolute chaos. How can we be a team that us as Spurs fans hate or just dislike so much at the moment, almost to a point of hate, and yet still be top 4? Explain that to me, Rick.
I think it maybe says a lot about the teams that are around us as well, Cracks, right? I mean, that might be an argument where, Newcastle, to be fair, they're slowly starting to ease up to some degree.
It's like, how are we here? How are we here? I don't know, but it is nuts. So apologies, everybody, for my tardiness. That's why we are where we are. And never mind how did Spurs get into the top 4. I'm an old retired tube train driver from East London, and I'm on with Russ Williams, a fine broadcaster that is like, when he listened to him, it's like liquid honey being poured into your ear. And Chris Bavan, that's got his own show on BBC TV, and I'm a retired tube train driver. Never mind how did Spurs get into the top 4. How did I get here? Carry on, Rick.
You know what's interesting, Craig? You make a reference there, that obviously it's a much needed win, Russ, to get us back into the top 4. But there was some real, you got to say, standout displays. Emerson Royal, I think you've been on numerous occasions of us and maybe questioned, can that guy revive a Spurs career? He was brilliant today. We'll come on to him in more detail. Son as well. Those players both have already had difficult seasons, and with the goals in the absence of Conte, Stellini's 100% record continues. I mean, how much credit do you give, Russ, to Stellini today for once again, you've got to maybe say giving a bit of a transformative second half team talk? Because, we discussed, as you said there, on WhatsApp during the game. I said to you, I was really concerned that going into half time, West Ham could really, really fancy this. And I think it was so crucial to start the way we did second half, because we did almost set the tempo in that second half, that we came out with a real belief that we were going to take the game to West Ham. They had no answers, did they, Russ, really?
No. I mean, whatever Christian Stellini, Stellini said was a lot better than what David Moyes said to his players. I don't know whether Conte was on the telephone in the dressing room, but it's still very difficult for him to, grab hold of the players and make them respond in the way that they have done so many times in the second half of the games that we've watched Spurs play this season. So I think he has to get quite a lot of credit. And we've had one or two people tweeting us tonight, Rick, saying, look, if Antonio through ill health can't continue, or he leaves the club, or he falls out with the chairman and does both, basically, why shouldn't we consider giving Christian Stellini a shot at the big job? I'm not writing the obit for Conte because, like a lot of people, I hope that he stays and actually gets from the owners the money for the players that he wants to play the system that he wants to, because at the moment there are still a number of players, even in the first team, who, for what we want to achieve without stress, and just be a really good football side as we expect our club to be, they are going to have to spend some money. Why shouldn't he? It's not fashionable, but look what Chelsea did, right? Sorry to swear, but they've got a fella who's doing really well at Brighton, and they've signed him up for 5 years, by the way, and it simply isn't working. I mean, it would suit Daniel Levy to say, Christian, do you want to be the manager? Because I know a lot of people want Poch back if Conte goes or is forced to go for reasons that are personal. But there's a lot of Spurs fans who don't think that's the route to go. And as we know, to use another football cliche, possessing the shirt is 9/10 of the game, isn't it? And at the moment, even though Antonio's on his iPhone or iPad or Zoom, Stellini is the man who's sleeping soundly at night, to quote him, and he's doing a good job. And I'm quite happy with him to be running things, because his performances as standing coach have been magnificent so far. Could all go horribly wrong.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
You're right. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Chris, coming over to you, I think I said to you off air, Russ. I mean, to me, Stellini strikes me as a real loyalist that I think is very happy and coveted to be Conte's right-hand man. I don't know if he's got much of an ambition to almost step out of the mould of an assistant and want to go it alone. Because I might be wrong here, but I feel on his age alone, I feel like I say he's fairly, I think, happy, being there as that number 2 to Antonio. Despite this unbelievable record that he's got now, I think he's managed, 6 games in Antonio's absence, or 5, and he's won every single one of them. That's in combination with Inter and with Tottenham. He spoke to Sky afterwards and he said, Conte sent me some text to the bench. They transferred it to me. He is good. He's fine, and he can be involved in the game, so that is fine. Sometimes I want to do things and I ask him and he allows me and Ryan. Sometimes he tells us to wait, and sometimes he asks what we feel about players and their stamina. So it does feel, to be honest with you, Chris, it feels like a very much of a combination of Conte, of Stellini and Mason as well in there that are making these decisions. But what do you make of the way in which he does seem to be getting a tune out of these players in the absence of Antonio?
Yeah, it's difficult to say, because obviously we're not there, are we? So we don't really know. And we were talking just very briefly before we came on air about it. There's 2 schools of thought, isn't there? One is that they're doing it for Antonio in his absence. Are they, is Stellini saying, right, look, he's laid up in bed, he wants to be here, he's not here, he's in a lot of pain. Let's go out there and put a performance in for him. Or is he coming in? Is he broadcasting into the dressing room at halftime? I don't know. But I've got a lot of time for Stellini. I think he talks a lot of sense. I love the way he talks. He's got a really lovely, calm way about him. But you're absolutely right. There is a real, not only very obviously, obvious loyalty there, but there's a very deep friendship there as well, isn't there? So, I don't know whether he has any desires to go on and do it on his own or carve his own sort of managerial career out. But yeah, I mean, listen, he's doing a tremendous job, isn't he? And well, obviously we want Conte back, but long may it continue in his absence. But it's easy, isn't it, to take over from someone, just for that sort of short term. It's when you start having to drop people and when you have to be the man in charge. You always see it, don't you? When a tough manager moves away and the arm comes round and, you're allowed to eat ketchup again and you can have a nice time. And it has that lift and it has that bounce for a while, doesn't it? But it's very short-lived, invariably. And then that's when the experience and the tactical, nous really kicks in. So who knows? But yeah, I mean, fabulous 3 points today, and he's done every time he's been asked to do it. He's done an incredible job.
Yeah, no, I agree. Cracks come over to you, Stu. He said, I'm not expecting Antonio back for Chelsea, but I'm expecting him back the next week. Milan, or we have the FA Cup, of course, against Sheffield United. Maybe not Chelsea, but we don't know. If he feels well and can live stress without pain or feeling something strange, he'll be back. He then followed that up by a question that's obviously come up on the pod here that we're talking about. And he says on his 100% record in charge over 6 matches, he says, this happens because Antonio is the gaffer, not because I'm the gaffer. I only follow the project of his work. The way he works is really clear, and I use my experience in a lot of stuff. We work in a team, and we work very well, especially with Ryan, who helped me a lot. So he seems to quash any kind of opportunity there to take any self-praise from the win. I think that maybe tells you everything where his mindset is at. It does feel like they're very much all a team, and it's a team result rather than him focusing on the fact that he has now managed 6 games in Antonio's absence and won all 6.
Well, I think we all wish Antonio Conte the very best and hope he returns to health and happiness. Listen, we can't get away from the rumours that maybe Antonio is not at Tottenham at the moment because of other things other than his operation. Let's throw the elephant in the room out there and say that, you know, because of the comments he made post-match after the Milan game, all of a sudden he needs to go and recuperate again. And the rumour's out there, Rick, isn't it? I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. But, you know, the rumour's out there that Conte is now finished with Tottenham, and him going to recuperate was a little bit of time buying whilst the club make their decision on the next move. Honestly, I can't see Antonio being here past the end of the season when his contract finishes. That's just the way it is. So, you know, it's a dangerous game. If he has gone from Tottenham and they're saying that he's gone to recuperate, then how are they going to square that circle when he doesn't come back in another couple of weeks' time? So, look, I'm hoping that nobody's hiding behind a recuperation from an illness, because there's other forces at work and other elements to this at work. We don't know. Only the sands of time are going to tell us that. So, but where we are at the moment, Stellini's doing a great job. It's as simple as that. You know, if he's saying it's Antonio pulling the strings behind the scenes, then so be it. Great. Then come back and pull the strings like yourself. But I don't know. Modern football's a weird old animal, Rick, isn't it? Who's the lad at Brighton at the moment? Let me just have a Casido, Moses Casido. Brighton bought him for like £2 million, £3 million. Now he's £100 million player. Gnonto at Leeds, we was talking about this the other night on the show, wasn't we? He was 2 bob and a bag of balls. And all of a sudden he looks like a world beater. So you haven't got to pay a lot of money, or you haven't got to have a massive profile in football to go on and become something. Martin Yole was assistant to, refresh my memory, Rick, because I'm getting old now. Martin Yole,
Jack Santini, of course,
thank you. Was Santini's assistant, and he came in and took the job over, and we all loved him. Yeah. So what the point I'm driving at is, because you're not £100 million player or €100 million euros player, it doesn't mean that you're not good enough. Emerson Royal is a point in case. Ever since you know, some competitions come in for him, he's been absolutely pulling up trees. He's been magnificent. You can't drop him out the side now. So football's a strange old game. So if Antonio Conte goes and the players are happy to play for Stellini, why not Stellini? Why not Stellini? It's as simple as that. The price tag means nothing. If they're the right fit and they're doing well, go with it. Go with it. Give it a chance. Give that player at £2 million a chance, because all of a sudden he might become £100 million player, like Arsenal tried to buy the boy from Brighton, didn't they? For nearly £100 million. £100 million. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
I'll be
So
honest with
the
you,
same goes to managers as well, doesn't it? If
Yeah.
if the players love Stellini and they like him and he's doing well, give him a chance.
I know. I can only go by. I mean, the comments that we have from him post match seems to indicate to me that he couldn't be any more further aligned to Antonio if he possibly tried. You know, he's at any point to have taken any kind of self praise. He is very much kind of deviated away from that and said, "Look, it's a team thing with myself and myself
Maybe
and
he's
Antonio
taking
and
the
Ryan."
pressure off of himself, though, Rick,
Maybe
isn't he?
I'll be stunned. I mean, I don't think he's had any. I totally understand where you're coming from, Cracks. I think he's had. I mean, from what I can gauge, he's not had any other manager experience apart from being Antonio's right-hand man. And you would think that if he had any kind of ambition or anything otherwise to suggest he would like to do anything different, you think this would now be the best time to say it when you've been unbeaten in 6 games and you're getting results, and Antonio hasn't really been getting results. But I will make a point.
Rick, I'd never had any experience of presenting a show, and all of a sudden I found myself on stage talking to Steve Perryman in front of 200 people once. And then that was 20 years ago. And from there, I went on to become like doing the Legends Nights. Now, I'm not saying I'm like any good at it, but people seem to enjoy it. And that was 20 years ago.
Exactly.
And I'd never done it before. So, all of a sudden,
I'll ask you a question.
Sometimes people fall into things, don't they?
Let me ask you,
happens.
to ask you this directly then for you. Do you think he's got any personal ambition to want to be Tottenham's manager? Because I don't think he does. Do you?
I hope he does. I think you should do. You should always want to push yourself and push the envelope. So I hope he does. And I would really hope that if Antonio's finished, he gives Stellini his blessings to go and have a go at it. And it just might work, Rick.
Yeah, I hear you.
Football's mad. It might just work.
Well, listen, just to pick up on the comments here, look, we do wish Antonio the very, very best in regards to his recovery.
Absolutely.
I think we all want to see the man, well, fit, healthy, and back in that Spurs dugout. Russ, we talk about the fact that, this season in general, it's actually maddening when you look at the fact that Spurs are now in that top 4, the first time I had since in 2023. We've had situations where the results have been all over the place. The players have been in and out of form. We've had injuries galore. We can't add, a number of 4 or 5 really key injuries to this team. And yet Spurs find themselves 4th in an opportunity where they can still progress far in the FA Cup. They've got a winnable Champions League tie for AC Milan. Are you quite surprised, Russ, bearing in mind so much frustration this season where we find ourselves in is in quite a good place on paper?
Yeah, it is. And I am surprised because of the football that we've played for most of the time, particularly in, as we know, the first half of games, which has been consistently poor. I think all that being in the 3 competitions and being where we are is great. The problem is now, from Tottenham's point of view, with Antonio Conte's illness, that it's actually kicking the big issue that can even further down the road towards the end of the season. And I think that isn't particularly helpful because this is Tottenham Hotspur Football Club and it's bigger than Antonio Conte or Christian Stellini or any other manager you want to think about. And so there needs to be some clarity. And I understand fully that Antonio has got to get himself fit. We all wish him well. We all understand that health comes first. But, when he comes back, it could be, for example, early, middle of March. Well, there's only 2 and a bit months to go. And we're in the position where we don't really have a positive indication that he's going to be around next season. And I think that is unsettling for the players as well. So in a way, what I'm trying to say is it's even more remarkable that they're 4th, doing well in the FA Cup and stand a really good chance of getting to the last 8 of the Champions League because of that situation and obviously the squad deficiencies that we have and the bad buys consistently over many years that we've made. So to be still here, not playing particularly well or as well as we should do, being in those 3 competitions, having one of the world's top managers, even his critics have to accept that the bloke is a winner. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm quite surprised, but pretty happy. But I think the road is going to be a little bit rocky. And as soon as it can be put there in our hands as Spurs fans, we know exactly what can happen in the space of 1 week, week and a half, 2 weeks. So we've got to keep the faith. But the players certainly seem to be buying into what the manager and his assistant and coaching team are trying to do at the moment. Perhaps because no indication even to them behind the scenes from Conte has been made. They won't be able to keep that quiet anyway.
I don't think you can in football these days. I think given the nature of social media and the way the world works, I guess can't have been the case. But, again, Chris, we mentioned that word inconsistency. It is baffling how, we can get absolutely bashed up by Leicester 4-1. And then you look at that second half performance today. But again, I do want to make the fact, I don't want to get completely carried away here. We're playing against the West Ham side that have now gone into the relegation zone, given the nature of today's result. Do you think we're still going to be in for much of an inconsistent season, or do you think at some point it is going to level itself out? Because as we've said, we're losing arguably 3 or 4 key players at a key crucial time in the season. And then when you add to that, we've had players severally off form. I think Kulusevski will come on to today. Hasn't looked the same since the World Cup. I'm not sure if that's a form issue or if that's actually where he's carrying an injury and he's trying to play through that. But does that result give you any confidence today, Chris, that this can be the start of something as we look ahead, obviously, of course, to Chelsea next week, given the situation they're in at the moment?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you sort of, it's the hope that keeps you alive, but it's the hope that kills you as well, isn't it? Especially being a Tottenham fan, But yeah, I mean, if you think about the last sort of 10 days, unbelievable performance against Man City. I don't think we did particularly badly against Milan, to be honest. I don't think we did too much wrong. I think we did okay. I think the 2 young boys in midfield did fabulously well, Sarr and Skippy. The Leicester game is just an absolute just travesty and hopefully a blip. But then today, I don't think we did too much. I don't think we did anything wrong, really. We didn't let them sort of play at all. They had 1 or 2, maybe 2, 3 chances maximum, and they were all from the edge of the box. So yeah, you'd like to think that actually we can sort of, we've had the blip with the injuries, so now we're starting to see a resettled side. Those players that are coming in, Forrester and whoever else, Sarr or Skip or whoever might be replacing those injuries, are starting to get a few games under their belt. So in principle, we should be over that initial sort of shock of losing those players. So you would like to think that we can go on a bit of a run, but it does require not losing games and it was, I think it's Conte that said, if you can't win, don't lose, and I think we need to start to get into that sort of rhythm, don't we? Where we if we can't get over the line completely, we're not getting beaten. We're certainly not getting beaten 4, possibly should have been 5-1. You'd like to think that we can sort of, move into some slightly smoother waters, but this is Tottenham, this is football. It never works like that. And I think, I think lots of teams are going to pick points up against everybody. So I think it's going to be a tight, bumpy ride to the end of the season. I think there's, as it has been probably for the last 2 or 3 seasons, to be fair.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, we've seen when Spurs have got into the top 4, they've never really been in too much of a position in the past where they've had a huge, almost kind of cushion to rely on. It's always been fairly tight when Spurs have qualified for the top 4. What I am going to do is to bring in the stats from today, and I will read out some of the listener statements that we've had in. So, like I say, 2-0, 16 shots for Spurs to West Ham 6. 6 on target for Spurs, the 1 on target for West Ham, 16 fouls committed by Tottenham. I tell you what, you'll notice obviously on the back of that game how much Romero loves a tackle. Cut the yellow cards. I would argue, we'll come on to one of West Ham's they picked up, that they were very lucky to actually finish that game with 11. Mikel Antonio, was booked at one point, and a couple of minutes later, had he not been given the yellow card just that second earlier. And this probably goes back to Russ's frustration. I know he said in the past, the referees, which I will ask him about, because naturally I do wonder on a different day if Mikel Antonio would still be on the field. Spurs showing that position there, 57% to 43%. Some of the statements that we've had a statement from G_Division who says 1 point from their 2 cup finals, are they finally going down in reference to West Ham? Jake Hawk says, should we think about using Son as a super sub for the foreseeable future? We all love him, but his pace versus legs, tired legs, late seems to be something that we should be maybe considering. Johnny Ward says, interesting debate question on our recruitment. Does anyone think of our summer or January signings will score a Premier League goal this season? Very good point there, given that obviously Richarlison started that game. Antonio Anthony SJ takes us back onto the Stellini subject, where he says, Stellini made changes which fans have been calling for and it worked. Does this show Antonio is out of touch, stubborn, or both? I feel like at the moment with Antonio, look, as we said our piece on Antonio, that I think we all wish him the very, very best. I think, look, today's result shows you with Stellini that he hasn't been afraid to make decisions. I mean, halftime has shown you that whatever the message has been delivered, whether that's a combination of himself, Mason, and Conte, they have come to that result. And he made that very, very clear, as I referenced in those post-match comments, that there was continual text messages happening between Conte, Stellini on the touchline. We obviously know Conte is resting at the moment, or recuperating, should I say, in Italy. So it's one to keep an eye on. And we shall see. What we will do, we will go for our first break of the show for our listeners and audio. And as Cracker says, the man of the moment, Christian Stellini, will take you into that audio break as he gives you his thoughts on the back of that win against West Ham. As we dive into the game, we're joined by the brilliant Russ Williams, the superb Chris Bavan, and Richard Cracknell, the brilliant Richard Cracknell, taking you through on Last Word on Spurs. We've got about 1,000 of you watching us live. So again, thank you ever so much, as always, for all of your incredible support for the show. And we made that joke at half-time. We wasn't quite sure of the nature of the way this game was going to go. But I would say, again, with a lot of Spurs, it always comes down really to the starting 11, which we will bring up and go down to Russ if we can to have a chat on. So, Russ, Spurs, in terms of changes, we saw Ben Davies coming in.
Yeah.
I think this was his first time as a left wing-back under, you'd say, that combination of Christian Stellini, Antonio Conte. We know that Christian Stellini said beforehand that Perisic needed to have a break, which he got. Emerson Royal continued in place of Pedro Porro, who we laughing and jokingly say now, not sure we're going to get a look at the moment, which is, I think I'd never say that at all, given how we chased the man down in January. Many would have argued that was one of the most defensive back fives you would ever have seen at Spurs. But the argument is that at full time, maybe you would have felt differently to that, given the nature of that result. We saw Skip favoured in that midfield over Sarr. So it was a really workman-like midfield with Højbjerg in that front three for Spurs, who actually struggled in, we saw against Milan. We had a bit of a change up there. We saw Richarlison come in for just his third ever start in that position, with Huminson dropping to the bench for just the second time this season. So that team read Forster, Romero, Longley, Dyer, Emerson, Skip, Højbjerg, Davis, Kulusevski, Kane, Richarlison, with a bench of Austin, Sanchez, Tanganga, Porro, Sarr, Perisic, Lucas, Danjuma, Son. Keen to know your thoughts, Russ, when you saw that team.
Yeah.
Where's
Sarr was the first thing I thought. Because I thought in Milan he was absolutely terrific, and Skippy did very well as well. But I just think that Sarr gives us a bit of youthful energy in midfield. He can pass the ball. He's not afraid to go forward. And I think where in midfield we fall down and have done for a long while, I'm sorry to go on about it again, is we don't have a locksmith. Yes, I know Højbjerg's pass today was a locksmith pass, but we don't have a locksmith who can play the ball in such beautiful ways to Sonny and Harry Kane, or Richarlison and Harry Kane, so that those two, whoever's up front, don't have to make their own service, if you know what I mean. So I was surprised that Sarr wasn't in. It didn't surprise me that Emerson Royal was picked again over Porro. I mean, poor old Porro, the debut he had wasn't particularly spectacular. He admitted it himself, and I think that Emerson has come on and on and on and on and stood up, and he's a real bloke. He obviously loves the club, and he is the Brazilian who's playing like a Brazilian for us at the moment. I mean, the goal today was classic Conte ball, wasn't it? It was Ben Davies and Emerson Royal putting it in the back of the net. And, once again, I think we're all delighted for him, because he may not be the most skillful player in the world, but he's got a lot to offer the team, and his heart is enormous. And look, what an important goal today, to get that first goal against West Ham, who could have dug in and been really, really difficult to break down, trying to get a point, full credit to him. I think Kulusevski is slightly off form at the moment. Don't know what the problem is. Could be an injury. But really, since after we resumed after the World Cup, I don't think he's quite been the player that he was, but it happens. doesn't it? And, we've had a lot of comments tonight, haven't we, Ricky, on Sonny not starting. I think a lot of Spurs fans probably thought that was a good thing. And as it turned out, he came on, he looked twice as quick as he's looked for weeks and scored a wonderful goal in Son style that we've been so used to seeing him scoring in that way, haven't we, over the last 3, 4, 5 years. And as a little fella was holding up the phone at the end of the game for people who were watching on television, Sonny is already a Tottenham legend, and we all know that. We all love him. But he had a smile on his face after the game. He was interviewed with Ben Davis, who incidentally was Sky's man of the match. Oh, sorry, you've got to be PC player of the match.
Player of the match.
Yeah, wow, that makes a big difference, doesn't it? But anyway, so, should he be our super sub? No, I don't think he should. I think 9 times out of 10 he'll start, because I don't know what everybody else thinks, and I'll throw it out there. I'm going to shut up now. Richarlison, for me, he looks literally like a square peg in a round hole at Spurs at the moment, and we know he's a really good player. Look what he did for Brazil, admittedly in a different position. I know that. But we've got to find, if we're spending money on players like that with obvious talent, the best way to get it out of them. And at the moment, for whatever reason, it's not happening, in my opinion.
It's interesting what you say that. I mean, I think the thing is, we say it's a lot on Last Word on Spurs that, Daniel would have thought to himself, and we've made, I think you've said this as well, Russ, when he's made these big money signings, you can maybe understand to some degree why he's very hesitant to put down the huge amount of cash when he's done it with Ndombele, Lo Celso, Richarlison, and they haven't really simply given him a return on that. Now, I think with Richarlison, for me, I think he's been very harshly treated in the amount of game time he's had this season.
Yeah.
And I think as a player that it's very hard to find a rhythm unless you are given 7, 8, 9 games, which Son has arguably been given. And we have given him a huge amount of opportunity. And I think as fans, I think we've been very, very patient with Sonny, because there is that mutual adulation and respect there for what he has done at Spurs and the amount of goals he's scored. Because I do think if that was another form of a striker who we've seen down the years at Tottenham, who maybe wasn't as glamorous or wouldn't have done the goals or scored the goals he would have done, I'm not sure had we been that patient. But I do think Richarlison, I agree with you that today, for me, he's not looking like he's, playing with the team. I do agree with you, Russ. There's something that isn't quite right there, but I do think that's up to, naturally giving him more game time, finding a way for him, because there's no doubt about it. Look, he's a Brazilian number 9, and he's got goals in the game. He's got goals in the shirt. He's got goals as a player. And I do think that, he's deserving of a place in this team. I will add that I think Kulusevski did have a better second half, but he's nowhere near the player that we saw in the first half of the season. You can't get away from that. So whether it's a case where we need to maybe, again, I think we'll come on to Son shortly, but the fact that, it's worked twice now where he's come off the bench, he's scored goals, you maybe argue that maybe at the moment for Son, I hate you to say that, but I think he's maybe a bit more of a squad player right now. And that might sound absolutely insane when you're just saying this is the guy that won the Golden Boot last season. But if that's what it's got to take to motivate him, then I don't know. Look,
or change formation, play 4-4-2 and put him in the middle.
Well, I agree. Why have we got to be so stubborn with that formation?
Yeah.
Chris, coming over to you.
I would love to see us play 4-4-2, to be honest. It'd be better than what we're playing now.
I think there's... I mean, we hear a lot about Conte with, the natural where he has got at Chelsea, he did change up a couple of times with the formation. I think you can arguably say at Tottenham, we have seen a much more rigid stubbornness with regards to the formation. But I don't see why, if you've got the players and the personnel there, why you can't change it up in accordance to that. But we will come on to Richie shortly. But I will bring it back, if I can, to the first half. We saw Harry Kane led out by his beautiful daughters, who both wore Daddy 267 on the back as their mascots. The Spurs fans sang one of their own. It was a lovely moment for Harry, to be fair. But Chris, I have to ask you about this handball, because the more I watched it back 3 times.
Definitely.
And Carrera, he actually he had his hand down in the box. He almost scooped the ball. It baffles me.
It was off the ground. The law is quite simple, that if he's breaking a fall with his hand, no penalty. And this is the second weekend in a row West Ham have got away with not having a penalty given against them. But it's a wider issue. A wider issue is VAR. We all know it's no longer the elephant in the room. It's sitting on top of it.
How scary is that, Russ? But how scary is that, Russ, that VAR looked at that and still didn't give it? That for me is the most scariest situation. That I don't know about you. Well, I'll go to Chris, then I'll go to Russ on this. Chris, the fact that VAR has looked at that and deemed that's not a penalty. In what world is that not a penalty?
It's bonkers, isn't it? I suppose the thing is, if he hasn't moved it, well, if the rules are, if you haven't moved your arm to the ball now, isn't it? And if you had no choice, so if he's sort of cushioning his fall or he's leaning and then he's not. But I mean, I'm 43. I played football for God knows 30 odd years, whatever it is, longer, 35, 37 years. And I must admit, I don't understand the handball rule nor the offside rule anymore. I mean, it beggars belief, doesn't it? But they don't want to give handball. It's almost as if they're trying to eradicate handball, penalties for handball from the game. That's how it feels, which is a shame that they hadn't done it in the Champions League final all those years ago. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. But luckily we didn't need it. Luckily it wasn't, it didn't sort of affect the outcome of the game. Otherwise you'd be absolutely livid, wouldn't you? But yeah.
Could you imagine?
Yeah, well,
yeah.
Last weekend, sorry to butt in, Rick, here.
Cool. Nice.
They're our next opponents, right? Chelsea, the players were livid with that handball because they knew it was a handball. Graham Potter, their manager, for some reason was reticent to even criticise.
He's the most polite guy, though, isn't he? Like you just think you could get top 9-0 and he'll come out and say, "Yeah, but the other team were really well prepared."
Yeah,
I just felt that battling with Southampton.
That's another story. Whether he survives there, Graham, or not. I mean, maybe he won't be in the dugout when they play us. But anyway,
Tottenham next,
I
right? You know how this goes, mate.
Michael Oliver today made a point of bending and looking at that incident in real time so he could see it. Then, as Chris said, VAR, I've got to look at it. It's a handball. His hand is off the ground. He's not breaking a fall. He's not even attempting to break a fall. He just put his hand down. Savor the game, as Stylo said. I mean, that's funny. But it's not funny because VAR is there to correct clear and obvious errors. And that was. As was last weekend as well with West Ham.
But I don't know. Like I say, Chris kind of alluded to it there. Cracks come over to you. I don't know. That's a rule change. Someone's put in the comments. So again, I don't know if I can validate that or be sure on this. The rule said if a player is going down, I can't remember if this is sarcasm or if this is actually genuine. He then needs his arm to support him upon hitting the ground.
It wasn't on the ground.
No penalty.
No.
the whole thing's just a nonsense. VAR's a nonsense. Honestly, the whole thing is an utter nonsense. We spoke about this before, and I gave you some stats that referees with making decisions with their own eyes when they look back on, I think it was 2,000 decisions they look back, and referees got 98.5% of decisions right. And I said to you that medical grade equipment in operating theatres have to have a success rate of 97%. So this is the machinery that goes into an operating theatre to actually save your life, has to have a failure rate of only 3%. And referees are getting 1.5% wrong. Railway signalling has to have a success rate of 98%. So referees' decisions were 0.5% better than railway signalling. Railway signalling and operating equipment and referees' decisions with their own bare naked eyes were getting better results than equipment that looks after you on the railways in an operating theatre. So this VAR is an absolute nonsense. There was no need for it, Rick. Absolutely no need for it. And yeah, all right, I'm still bitter about the Champions League final. I will judge every penalty decision off of Sissoko's handball. If that's a handball, then everything else that's anything similar to it is also a handball. That's a Champions League final. If we'd have gone on to win that, we're talking about a different club altogether today.
Agreed.
And yet the decision for Sissoko's handball like could have robbed us. Liverpool could have gone on to win that Champions League final. Maybe they would have, but we got robbed of that in the first few minutes. If that's a handball, today's a handball. It's as simple as that, Rick. All I want is consistency.
Absolutely.
Is some consistency.
Just to jump in there, that would, by today's standards, that isn't handball. So because it's above the shirt, isn't it? That's the new rule, isn't it?
Yes, this is what they're arguing. They're arguing
handball. It would not be handball in today's game.
The Sky have read this out after the game, Russ, to close it on this subject. Sky have read out that, as Ray has said here, the rule said if a player is going down in his arm to support him upon hitting the ground, hence no penalty. But for me,
it's
But Rick, it's like offsides, VAR offsides. Sonny was offside. Do you remember if Sonny was offside about 3 seasons ago by a toe?
Yeah.
By a toe. And what is he, a size 8 boot? Size 9 boot? So if a player's got a size 5 boot, if it was Jermaine Defoe with a size 5, size 6, he'd have been onside. So you've actually punished a player being offside because he's got a foot size 2 sizes bigger than another striker. Like Ivan Toney must wear a size 12, 13 boot, mustn't he? Yeah. So he's offside, and Sonny, it's a size 8 or 9, isn't offside. Where does this madness end? This is the crap of VAR. That's what I'm saying to you. It's crap. If you've got a shoulder bigger than another player, or your shirt sleeve comes a bit further up your arm because you've got some guns, versus a player that doesn't have their free shredded wheat in the mornings, then you are and you aren't, depending on your physical structure. Come on, that's not right, is it, Rick? That's ridiculous.
Rick, Johnny Boy has made a good point here that apparently Harry Kane was offside, which means that the handball couldn't be given regardless of whether the handball is a handball.
But we didn't even get to that point, Russ, did we?
No,
we didn't even get to that point.
They need to give the penalty.
Thank you.
Before they go, oh, hang on a minute. Or Alan Smith goes, oh, I think this is offside. He shouldn't be on our bloody games, by the way. Sick of it. But anyway, sorry, it just winds me up in being involved whenever we're on the telly. I'm sure he's a lovely bloke, but he shouldn't be allowed near our games. But what you want to see is, yes, they've given a penalty for handball, but hang on a minute. The referee, Michael Oliver, hang on. Oh, no, it's an offside, Harry Kane. So it's explained and people can see it. It was a handball.
I agree. Chris, do you want to come back in on that point?
Well, it'd be interesting to see how far players can push this now, because actually, if you're going to ground, could you actually properly extend your arms and make an actual save? You know, if you're going down, you know, at what point, you know, because there's no parameters of you can fall down as long as your body's within its natural frame or whatever. Like it's just again, they're just creating these rules, but with loads of levels of interpretation within it, and it's just all they're doing is compound. They're making it more confusing. You know, you just want straight lines, you want formulas, you want black and white, yes or no, it is or it isn't. Not, but it's still subject to interpretation. So many of these rules, and it's just bonkers. It's that, you know, no one likes it. You know, the fans hate it. You know, it's bad enough when you're watching at home, let alone in the stadium where you have absolutely no idea what's going on. You're not watching the replays. It's just, you know, it is a farce. It's an absolute shambles, and it needs rectifying. It really does.
Rick, I always say this. How have they got the technology to say when a ball is actually left somebody's foot? Because as far as I'm seeing, what we see on the screen, it looks like somebody having a go at Adobe Paint in Windows 95, doesn't it? When they draw the lines. Now, but it is though, isn't it?
Yeah,
but
you make a great point.
Is it as the ball leaves their foot? We're talking about millimeters and milliseconds. Is the technology they're using able to define the moment the ball leaves the passing player's foot for the offside? How are they actually getting to that point? At what point? Is it as he touches it? Like, because there is like almost a second's worth of like human mechanics of a ball leaving somebody's foot. So at what point do you stop the pictures and draw the lines? It is honestly, Rick, it is that finite of millimeters and milliseconds, and I don't think they've got the technology to actually make that call. So if you're having a good guess at VAR, leave it to a good guess to a ref. But gets it right 98.5% of the time. The whole thing is crap.
And you know what? VAR takes the chaos out of football.
Possibly.
The reason you love it.
But if I go from chaos to the absolute insanity, I have to talk about Emerson Royal, Chris. Coming over to you because this is some form of a transform of a footballing career. And the way he finished it, I've got to say, there was a lovely goal set up by Ben Davies, who arguably I know was Sky's player of the match today. But I mean, Højbjerg, to be fair to him, to get that weight of the pass right, that in itself needs a real applaudance and some praise because it was a lovely ball through from Højbjerg. And as we saw, the Welshman ran onto it and teed it up for Royal to score. And it's just phenomenal when you see what that means to him, to the players, to everybody. Have you quite noticed or seen, Chris, in your time as a Spurs fan, this form of a transformative career turn, when at one point it looked like he was done? I mean, to the point where fans were almost kind of applauding him or getting him wanting to leave the club in January. To turn this around when we've bought a £40 million right back, it's baffling, isn't it? Quite incredible.
It really is. It's amazing. And do you know what? I don't like the booing. I don't like the jeering. I don't like the sarcastic applauding when he comes off. I think I don't like it at all. But over the last few games, he's done so. I mean, do you know what? Credit where credit's due. From every time he comes on that pitch, he tries his hardest. He does his best. I think the thing that's let him down previously is that final, when he gets into that final third, those decisions that he makes sometimes and the delivery is not always there. But again, to defend the boy, he's not a right wing back. He's a right back. That's never been his job. But he wasn't employed to do that. That's never been something that he's ever done. And he's trying and he's learning and he's taking it very seriously. And to his credit, he's just got his head down and just got on with it. So many players would have absolutely wilted under that pressure. You got 62,000 people sarcastically cheering you, off or jeering when you have a bad touch or whatever. That must be. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine how hard that is. But he's just got on with it. He's suffered it. He's taken it, and he's just got better and better and better. And that finish. I mean, wow! What? I mean, just passed it into the bottom corner there, just like as if it was nothing.
Chris, did he look like the Brazil number 9? He looked like he was the Brazil number 9.
Yeah, exactly.
Højbjerg, for me, the ball Højbjerg played through was just exceptional, and I'd love to say, Højbjerg is for me. I know he's got his doubters, and I know that he might not be world class, and he might not be that player that everybody wants to take us to the next level. But my God, that boy does his best every bloody game.
He does. I agree.
He absolutely sweats it. He leaves it all out there. He's a leader. I mean, I'm sure he's an absolute nightmare to play with. Christ Almighty, but he does everything you could ever want from him. He was very deep today, I felt, but that ball through to Ben Davies, and then Davies just perfectly, passed it across, and just what a fabulous goal. And there was a couple of instances like that today, actually, where we just thought we just made the game look incredibly simple again, as it is. But yeah, I thought Emerson Royal fabulous. He's I mean, Man City he was world class. I mean, I don't know if he got man of the match or not, because there's about 20 different man of the matches for every game these days. But yeah, I mean, he had Grealish in his pocket all game, did fabulously well, slightly more defensive responsibilities that day, but today he was excellent as well. Really, really well done to him. And hopefully he kicks on. And Pedro Porro. Maybe I think all our available players are out on loan, but maybe I don't know. Maybe we'll just tear his contract up as well. I don't know.
Well, I mean, John, you mentioned Højbjerg there. I will say I saw a lovely comment yesterday from Højbjerg where he said, look, when you wear this shirt, every game you have to win. It's the pressure you have to live with, and it's the pressure the club has to commit to. If you're not prepared to have that mindset, then you're at the wrong club. I love that attitude from Højbjerg. Whilst many maybe feel he's not good enough, which to me, I still think, I think he's really important as a squad player. I mean, maybe you'd argue at some point when we're looking to upgrade the squad, he may not necessarily be a starter, but definitely for me as a squad player alone, you need those kind of leaders in there, your Højbjergs, the workman-like type players, and Cracks, just to bring you in on Emerson Royal, you know, that composure that he's shown that final third, that is something you would never have associated with him, 3 or 4 months ago. But, you know, when you consider what that man's gone through in terms of the amount of abuse he's taken, not just in the stadium, but online, the amount of money he's spent to upgrade his game. I think, you know, he said from his perspective that he has almost studied Hakimi's game to try and adapt to playing in a Conte team. We're not going to say he's going to hit those incredible heights, but I think, you know, to have that ambition and that persistence to keep on believing and to fight through so much criticism, that in itself deserves a lot of credit, Cracks, doesn't it, for the way he's come through this period?
He's incredible, Rick. He is absolutely incredible. I think he's one of them footballers that's impressed me the most throughout all my time of watching football, not just Tottenham, football. This is a man that was shot at in Brazil last summer. I mean, somebody turned a gun on this man and took shots at him. I mean, he comes through that. He's took criticism. You know what I'm like with social media, Rick. I don't care what anybody says. But I've seen stuff said about Emerson Royal that I think even might have me running for cover and into my shell. And he's come back. He's facing some stiff opposition from Pedro Porro coming in. And he's taken the whole lot and he's gone, oh, I'll show you. Here we go. So he's come. He's honestly, Rick, I'm struggling to find the words to describe Emerson Royal, not the footballer, the person, to take so much criticism, to have so much heaped upon him in his personal life and stuff that goes on back in Brazil, because we all know what South America's like. You know, there's kidnapping of players' families and things like this. It goes on outside of football, and he's come through and he's chewed the whole lot up and spat it out. So not Emerson Royal the footballer, Emerson Royal the man that's just taken that everything, the whole lot, and he's just chewed it up and spat it out. And now, for me, Rick, he's undroppable. He's absolutely undroppable. You know, he's just got this. He's crazy. He's just got this attitude. Like, you know, if you could bottle it and sell it, you'd be a billionaire, wouldn't you? Like,
absolutely.
Two drops of Emerson Royal every morning with your breakfast, and like Holland and Barrett would be a multi-billion-pound company if they sold little tablets of Emerson Royal, wouldn't they? Same as Højbjerg. You know, he comes under some criticism, but he gets what it is to be a footballer. Him and Emerson, they just absolutely bleed football and what it is to be a footballer. Never mind that it's for Tottenham, just to be footballers and be that person that just goes and puts it all out there. So, you know, they might have the odd game where it doesn't quite happen for them, but the pair of them, both of them, you cannot fault their attitude to the game and what it is to be a footballer. I love the pair of them. Absolutely love them. I'll take 11 of them in that team right now.
And you know what?
Absolutely take 11 of them.
You know what, Crackers? Ben Davies, who gets a lot of stick from Spurs fans, in his interview after the game, where he picked up player of the match, he was talking about how important it is for all of them to play for the shirt and to give every last % of what they can on the pitch. So it's obviously something that is either catching from Emerson Royal. They've been down to Holland and Barrett, maybe Crackers, you know, and it's spreading through the squad because of what Conte is like. He's a winner, and they're proud to play for the club.
I've got to say to you, you know, Russ, so 4 Premier League starts, 3 clean sheets, 2 goals. If that was Pedro Porro, we would all be raving.
Yeah, we would,
wouldn't we? We'd be all raving if that was, you know, if that was what Porro had been achieving. So, how much credit do we have to give Royal for? What I would say again is, I use that to Chris. I said to him, this is the transformative effect on a season where arguably, you know, as Chris said there, you know, this guy was getting booed off the pitch before the window was closing. And now he's almost undroppable, as Crack said.
Well, he's going to get his own song, isn't he? No doubt about it now, Emerson.
I'll tell you what, just sorry to interrupt. I'll tell you, it reminds you of a left back that had a pretty shaky start, doesn't it? And then he went on to be all right. So
yeah, you're right.
Maybe that'll happen on the other side with a bit of luck, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good point you make, Chris. Obviously, I just think that it's all about let alone his football ability, which is clearly within him, but his makeup as a man, as a human being. As
I totally agree with that.
Was saying, you've got to be a special person, because anybody who's watching or listening to this brilliant Last Word on Spurs podcast or the YouTube show, watching it, they're not being honest with themselves if they're a Spurs fan, that they didn't seriously doubt him or worse.
We all did. I think we all
know. And anyone who says, "Oh no, I was giving him time," I'm sorry, Pinocchio is alive and well, whoever that is, because we all, without exception, wrote him off.
Absolutely.
And we all, as we've said before, owe him a big apology. Now, he may go into a terrible run of form, but there is a difference. He has proved to us he knows he can do it, wants to do it, and has done it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
so he shows real character, as Adrian Salim has just put up there you put the message up. He's absolutely right, Adrian. I mean, there's men and there's people like Emerson Royal.
Phenomenal. I think Crack, you referred to him as a lion on one of our last shows. That's exactly what he is, the heart of a lion, the character of a lion. You know, we don't say he's got, we've got to give him a song. He had a song today. He had one in the South Stand. He scores when he wants. And talk about scoring when he wants. We said it today. You know, again, you look at the facts for him now. He's now scored in three Premier League goals for Tottenham, Newcastle, Man City, West Ham. 2 of them have come in his last 5 appearances. You can't ask any more than that. And I think, again, you know, it does show you. We did see today those Conte wing backs combine and actually link up. It's something we've been massively critical about, where we keep saying change the formation, change the structure, change the system. But that was a Spurs goal today that involved none of the front three and was all about the wing back play, which is what we do want to see. So look, we hope that does continue. We really, really do, because look, Emerson Royal for the moment, I think as Crack says, he is quite simply undroppable, which is something I would never have thought I would have said on Last Word on Spurs. And Pedro Porro does remain on that bench. Now, we did see subsequently after that, just a minute after, a really good save for Fraser Forster. Now, I'm conscious, I think I've went in on Forster recently for some of the Leicester goals. When he has been in goal, I've been concerned by his positioning. But to be fair, that was a really good save to deny Bowen, because if that had gone at 1-1, I think you're looking at a completely different game. And as we said earlier about the handball, which I'm sure would have played on the players' minds there and thinking, you know, this is not win against us. Could we mentally recover? Moments later, we saw Richarlison subbed off for Son. I'm not going to lie, you know, with Richarlison, he looked pretty dejected as he went off there. I think Richarlison probably felt to himself that could have had more minutes, but I will say there was a huge applause that did ring out for Sonny. Now, whether that motivated him is another question, because he came onto the field with a rapturous applause from the Spurs fans. And like I say, before we discuss his goal, Russ, I feel like I always have to come on to you when it's refereeing decisions. Stellini and Mason furious on the bench, furious when Antonio caught Højbjerg late, but avoided a second yellow card from referee Michael Oliver. Do you think, Russ, are those fouls not being consecutively after a couple of minutes of each other, he could have seen red and should have seen red?
I think it's a real case for it. And what worries me more is Michael Oliver is probably our number one referee, either him or Anthony Taylor. They've all been making mistakes this season, and goodness only knows what the reasons are. Obviously, incompetence is one of them. You know, quick yellow cards. Is a referee brave enough to go yellow and very quickly after another yellow and off? Don't see it very often, do you? So I personally never like to see players get sent off. I like it to be 11 against 11, but obviously they do. And it can work in your favour or it can work against you. So would I have liked to have seen him sent off? I don't think it really was a red card. It wasn't the greatest challenge in the world, but I wouldn't have seeing him go off there for a red card. But I thought that he offered before. He's been a thorn in our side. Antonio scored a couple of cracking goals over the years against us. A bull of a man. I mean, I thought he looked pretty shot actually today.
I think a lot of that West Ham team at the moment, Russ, they look like they're going through the motions, which is why again today, maybe upon reflection tomorrow, whilst I'm really excited about that win today, I will try and obviously pay some more attention to the fact that we're playing against a fairly poor West Ham team that are, make no bones about it, sleepwalking themselves into a real relegation battle where all the teams around us this weekend have all picked up points. And whilst David Moyes has done a phenomenal job there, when you consider where he took them from and to in terms of Europe, I know there's a lot of West Ham fans now that do want him out. And, given the fact that where West Ham have been over the last few years in terms of being fairly stable, building on European football, I think that really tells you everything where they're at, where they just feel for Moyes that maybe the time has come. But look, we have to bring it on to Sonny. Before we do, just reading out some really sad news that's just come through to us here from Tottenham Hotspur directly, who claimed and made it aware that they've been made aware of some utterly reprehensible online racist abuse to Sonny during today's match, which has been reported by the club. And like all of us here at Last Word on Spurs, along with the football club, we do stand by Sonny, and we do once again call on those social media companies and authorities to take action. I think that, again, that makes a massive point where we've seen it ourselves on social media. There's a real lack of any sense of control where more has to be done. I think, again, we've said it on this show, people hide behind a profile picture of, it could be an image of somebody, a cartoonist, or not even themselves, and are allowed to give abuse to anybody and feel that's right. You would never do that in the street. You would never do that to anyone. So why does everyone feel that will be right to be done online? So I think, again, with the club and here at Last Word on Spurs, we call on those people to make those right decisions and do whatever they can do. And we also call on those social media companies, the big social media companies out there, that do allow and project shows like this to be able to be hosted and chosen and formed. We want them to act. We want them to do more. More has to be done because it's really unfair that we're in 2023 and I'm having to talk about something like that. And it really, really is sad because he's a really, really lovely guy, genuine guy, so happy when you saw him score. And he's got to go off and read messages and be, accustomed to abuse. It just simply isn't right. So I have to say that, which again is a real, real shame to do so. But Chris, to focus back on the football, he did react to being subbed again, or subbed, being left on the bench, because just 4.5 minutes it took for him to come onto the pitch and score. So is this almost like a new formula now, Chris, where it does suit him to be more of a off-the-bench player than a starter, in your opinion?
I mean, something's gone on, hasn't it? I don't know. I mean, he's gone from being, how many years has he been so fabulous and consistent for us that this season there's something has happened. I don't know what it is. Whether he's tired, he's been playing. He's played an awful lot of football. Whether it's a confidence thing, I don't know. But yeah, he took his goal so well that his goal was classic Son, wasn't it? Just taking it in his stride and bringing the ball with him. And then the finish was just textbook. Obviously being set up by Kane as well. It was something that we've seen hundreds of times, but not recently. But yeah, I think it's great to see him scoring. It's great to see him smiling. He is a legend. He absolutely is a legend. Again, he tries his best. But even with his play today, you can still see those issues there, can't you? Where he sort of runs beyond the ball, and he runs himself into trouble, or the step over step. I don't quite understand what's going on there. For me, whenever I've played football, when it's not going right, you go straight back to basics and try and feel your way back into a game, or feel your way back into a bit of rhythm. And I'll caveat, I was not the player, some was, but I don't know. It's not quite. It just doesn't seem to be quite happening for him. But the goal was fabulous, and he is ratcheting up a few now. So hopefully, he just gets that sort of, I don't know, whatever it is, that pressure, that expectation, that he's being too hard on himself. Obviously his expectation levels are sky high, as is those of his father and his team around him. So yeah, you just want him to get a few in quick succession and just forget about it and move on. Don't look back, just look forward. But yeah, fingers crossed. He is a fabulous player, and he's like a lovely person, doesn't he? And yeah, I wish him the very, very best, not just for Tottenham, but for himself as well. You know, it's not nice to see him sat on the bench. It's not nice to see him not playing well, because he's got, and I think he's a real, he feels like he's got a real presence around the club as well. You know, he's got a real positive influence on those around him. You know, he's very, very close to a lot of players, been there a long time. So yeah, fingers crossed. But we've seen this a few times, haven't we? You know, where we think, oh, he's got a few, or he's, you know, the hat trick or the brace or the goal against Palace or whatever it might be. You think that's it, he's going to kick on now, and then he doesn't quite. But yeah, the more goals, you know, he gets, it will happen for him. You know, it's that cliche, isn't it? You know, form is temporary, class is permanent, or whatever it is. You know, it will come for him, 100%. You know, you don't go from being Golden Boot winner and scoring however many goals it is. He's 100 Prem goals now, isn't he? I think maybe 101 now, whatever it is. But yeah, fingers crossed he can get back to playing like he used to.
Yeah, Cracks, come over to you. Look, I mean, it's crazy stats with the song. I've also, it was actually a lovely link up with him and Harry again. Once again, bringing that combo back together. It was a lovely, lovely move. But Son in the Premier League this season, 20 starts, 1 goal, 2 sub appearances, 4 goals. You know, we made that argument. I mean, he's been benched more often. Do you think it's honestly a thing, or do you think we're just waiting for Son to come to life and this is now the time and he doesn't just, again, start games? What do you make of that suggestion that maybe he's better as an impact sub, given those stats?
Well, I mean, Rick, we've said before, we don't know if something else going on in his life outside of football at the moment, which is leading him to be in a bit of a bad moment. And he might just be having a dip. Players do. So, you know, we don't know this, all sat round the transmitter and sort of surmising what might be going on. Those within the club do. So, you know, mum and dad might be ill. You know, I don't know. Something's going on in his personal life. He's split up with a girlfriend. This, that, anything. There could be 1,000,001 things that have gone on outside of football, which has fed into him not being so, you know, so prolific as he has been. But we've all seen how great he is. Like last season before, he's been fantastic for us. So it's just down to the management of the team to find a way to kickstart that. Now, whether that's because he's just sort of taking his eye off the ball and he needs dropping to refocus him, that's fine. He might need an arm round him. Sometimes it's stick, sometimes it's carrot, or a combination of both. But be under no illusion that Sonny is actually, he's a fantastic player. And he's come on today and he's shown that. The little link up with Harry, the ball through to Harry, the touch from Sonny is exactly what you want to see. 2-0, game over. So, of course, we've gone 1-0 up with Emerson. That's a player we've just spoken about and what he's had to overcome. So Sonny needs to also now find what he has to overcome, whatever that is going on. But two players that have been in bad moments for whatever reasons have come on today and won us that game against a team that we sometimes struggle against because they come and give us such a hard game, home or away, and a 2-0 victory. So, look, you know, us from the stands, we have to stick by these players and support them and stay behind them as much as we can. Because sometimes, just sometimes, they come good like Emerson has. So apply the same logic we have to Emerson with sticking with him and giving him the plaudits to Sonny. And I'm sure he'll find it again. And whatever's going on, he'll work through. And we go again. So, you know, there's much seems to be wrong at Tottenham at the moment, and there is in some respects, you know, with the board and with the manager and everything going on. But conversely, there's not too much wrong either, is there? If with the small tweaks and get this right and get this part of the club firing and get the mojo back with the manager and get the board a little bit back more in touch with what needs to be done on the pitch and the players, there's a squad of decent players there, Rick. More than good enough to make top 4. Just tweak the balances and the mixture a little bit and we're firing. We're good to go again. It's just all about finding those little things like players need to do individually, like we need to do as a club, and like we need to do as fans. So sometimes maybe that boo that some people give when, oh no, he's terrible, he's finished, he's done. Don't do it. Like, turn the boo into a little bit of support, and you might just find that you make the difference. A player might just find that changing a mattress like that they sleep on, which is something that we've had this week with Calvin Lewis, your man up at Everton, that's managing them now.
Calvert-Lewin,
yeah. And they're looking at the car he drives and the mattress he sleeps on. Little tweaks, might just turn things round. But listen, Sonny's probably not watching this. Somebody from his team maybe. He's had a load of stick again, a load of abuse again online, and just stop it. Just why? The trouble you've got, Rick, is you appeal to these people to stop giving racial abuse.
I'm not talking to normal people. I'm not talking to normal people. Yes.
No, but they're not listening, Rick. Normal people like you and I, if we're like, there's some behaviours that somebody pulls you up on, you go, oh, okay, I never realised that was offensive. And you go, okay, going forward, I'll change that behaviour. I'll give you an example with myself. Yeah, I spoke about somebody and I called him a leech, and I never really realised like the connotations of it. And somebody actually came back to me and said, "You do know that by calling him a leech, there's some historical references to that going back to the Nazis." And I never knew that, Rick. I never knew that. And from there, I changed my behaviours and I never used that language again. Never, ever used that. I went, okay, no, I didn't know that. Thank you for pointing that out. I'll never use that language and them connotations again because of the historical facts of it. That's the difference. Some people will learn from it. Others won't. Some people will never, ever learn. So you can speak to some people until you're blue in the face, but they'll continue. And that's just a really, really sad fact of where we are in society and everything. So, hopefully some people learn from it, but some people never, ever will.
Yeah, I do agree. It's a shame that in 2023 we're even talking like this. Before I ask the guys quickly on Chelsea, in a minute or so, just as Stellini, some lovely words on Oliver Skip. He said we had to wait for the right moment. He's a young player who needs confidence and feel everything perfect around him. He needs to play. This type of player needs to play. We can give him all the love we can, but he needs to play and get confidence. When he's confident, he's a great player with a great mind. He's an intelligent player. So real high praise there for Skip. To be fair, I know many today, also me as well, were maybe frustrated that Sarr wasn't given the opportunity to play alongside, of course, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. But to be fair, Skip really, apart from that booking early on, did not really put a foot wrong. He was really, really good. So it'll be interesting to see, obviously, ahead of next week. We've got a full week to work with the players. From what we understand, Antonio will not be back for Chelsea, as Stellini has obviously told us in that post-match press conference. But there's every chance we could see him for AC Milan, potentially. We shall wait to see. Funny moment actually before the end of that game, Declan Rice shouting, "No one likes you," twice in Højbjerg's face. Have no idea what that was about whatsoever. But an absolute bizarre moment to end the game there. Russ, very quickly before we let you go, it's been a great, great show. Chelsea next week. Have to ask you, I know we're, again, a million miles away from next week now. We're not sure what can change in the world of football with regards to the manager, with regards to the players. Is it going to be Dr. Tottenham we'll see you now, Russ? Or how do you feel about facing Graham Potter's Chelsea, if it is Graham Potter, in that dugout next week?
Doesn't concern me, really. I mean, given our history against them, which isn't particularly glorious for most of the time, a City performance would beat them without, even 3/4 of that performance that we put in against Man City. But if we play at home like we played away at Leicester, then we could be in trouble. But of course, my deepest wish, above all else in the Premier League, even Arsenal, is to beat Chelsea, because I just don't like the club. So there you go. So we'll win.
It is absolutely bizarre, isn't it, when you think about the fact that Graham Potter is arguably, Chelsea fans probably won't agree with, but he's quite a likeable person.
Very.
But yet he's managing a club that is completely unlikable. You know, when you put those two together, for me, it doesn't sit right anyway. So for me, it's almost like he's in like a walk-in for me, a walk-in exit. I don't know whether what you think, Chris. I know we would maybe joking off air. We might even know his demise on this show. But do you think, Chris, he will be in the dugout next week for Chelsea, given the nature for them and the horrendous run they're on currently under Graham Potter?
I don't think he's going to be, to be honest. I think we will see a different manager coming to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in charge of Chelsea next week. Could be Mourinho, who knows? But
could you imagine? Could you imagine?
I think, do you know what? I don't.
Football's crazy.
You would have put it past him, would you? And then we'll have to somehow beat a low block, won't we? But yeah, I don't know. A lot of my friends are Chelsea fans. I'm in a Chelsea WhatsApp group, which has been the highlight of my season, because it's been pretty hard watching Tottenham this year. My only saving grace has been in that WhatsApp group and just going, do you know what? That's a good point at Fulham or whatever, or Brentford, and it's been hilarious. But I think we beat them. I think we'll beat them, and then we can kick on from there. I think it's going to be rocking and rolling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Spurs next Sunday, I think it's going to be electric. I think the boys will come out I think we win. I think we win, but who knows? Is that
with a manager bounce, Chris? You think we'll win? Is that with a manager bounce still? Is that with a manager bounce?
Either way, but yeah, I think it could be. I think they'll raise it. Even if Graham Potter is in charge and they come as they are. They can't beat Fulham, they can't beat Brentford, they can't beat Southampton, they can't beat anyone. They'll come and give us a bloody good game, won't they? Without a doubt.
This is the thing, isn't it? The thing coming out of you, Cracks. If there's one team you want to face when you simply cannot hit a barn door or you're in complete out of form, it always is Dr. Tottenham will see you now. What do you think of this fixture next week? You're back with me, obviously, for Chelsea. How do you see this going, Cracks?
Well, Rick, we was talking about behavioural changes, and I laid it all out there personally, and I'll probably get a load of stick for it online, but hey ho. Why don't we have some behavioural change as fans going in to face Chelsea? Of course, they've had an Indian sign over us, but just for once, why don't we stop talking about Dr. Tottenham? Chelsea are in a terrible place at the moment. And we've come off the back of a 2-0 win today. So why don't we go there and say to ourselves when we play them, we can win this. We can absolutely win this. And not be like, oh, Dr. Tottenham will see you now. Oh, we never beat Chelsea. Oh, Chelsea this, Chelsea that. Don't go in with that mindset. Perhaps us as fans, as a whole fan base, and we go into this and go, I quite fancy this. We can beat them. We've got more than them. They're in transition at the moment. They're trying to put together a super group that just isn't quite clicking at the moment. So it may well happen for them. I mean, they've bought such quality players, but at the moment, it's not happening. Potter's not going to be there much longer, is he? So I just want us this week to just speak about Tottenham of having a real good chance of beating Chelsea. And don't keep talking about Spursy and Dr. Tottenham. Go, no, come on, let's have this lot. We'll have this lot this time. This is our moment. It hasn't been for years before, but why not now? And just be a little bit more confident and a little less negative about the game and go into it. If we go into it like we did against Man City and today, we win that game. We win it all day long. And we knock them out of the park, Rick. We absolutely knock them out of the park. So I'm going for a Tottenham win. But I want everybody to go with that attitude and mentality of a Tottenham win. No, forget Tottenham. Like the NHS is in a mess. Dr. Tottenham's part of the NHS. You're not getting an appointment with Dr. Tottenham, Chelsea. You've got to wait 52 weeks for it, like everybody else has in the NHS. It's not happening. Come on, let's go there. We'll take it to them with a little bit of confidence, a little bit of swagger, and a little bit of, come on, we're Tottenham Hotspur. Let's go and give it to them.
We know a week is a long time in football. We shall see what kind of Chelsea's are we're facing later next week. But Russ, it is always a pleasure, mate, having you on. You might be a bit of a lucky charm for us, Russ, now. We've had 2 back-to-back wins with you. We have to get on the phone soon.
As ever, it's a pleasure, and the people who are concerned about the dog listening, the dog is fine. You can see that the dog is fine. It doesn't move very much. So it's been a pleasure. Always is to be on with Crackers and to meet Chris after a great result. And I think we've got a better manager than Chelsea, a better stadium. We've got better players. We've certainly got better fans. We've got upside down beer. We will beat them.
Russ, a reminder for our listeners and watching audience, where can they listen to your dulcet tones on a day-to-day basis?
Nation Radio tomorrow morning, FM, DAB, online, on the app, Nation Player. Download it for free wherever you get your apps from.
Look at that. I always know it's smooth after a Spurs, but it's also smooth not after a Spurs.
Ricky's it's like ASMR, isn't it? Is that what they call it? Yeah, listening to Russ, isn't it? You know, he really is, isn't it? It's like the rustling of something next to your microphone, isn't it? Or just the opening.
Always makes it feel that more credible, right?
ASMR Williams.
Thank you, Rick.
Love it. Thank you so much, mate. Chris, lovely to be back on Last Word on Spurs, mate. There's been a long absence, so lovely to have you back on, mate. What's in your diary? What's coming up from in your world?
Working on a new book. Got a lot of food festivals coming up all over the country. So if you want to follow me on social media, I'll publicise them on there. And then when the spring, I think we're getting into spring now. So should start to film some new stuff, some new bits and pieces coming soon. So all will be revealed. So but anyway, this all the career stuff pales into insignificance. You just want Tottenham to do well, don't we? That's the highlight of everything. That makes what breaks it, doesn't it?
No pressure, right? No pressure. Cracks, always a pleasure, mate. Cracks, any legends nights you want to give a mention to that are still currently available that's worth looking at? They always make great presents. We always say this.
Exactly, yes. Thank you, Rick. I'll fly back into the UK on Thursday and then hit the ground running on Friday night. I'm in Surrey, in Chessington, with Gary Mabbott. So I'm doing an evening now. There's 1 or 2 tickets left, and I've got a couple of nights with Harry Redknapp, Michael Dawson.
No Beyonce just yet. You're not doing Beyonce yet.
No, Beyonce. Yeah, come on, Chelsea. You've not got Beyonce at your stadium. We have, all right. Has Chelsea got monster trucks or Lady Gaga? No. Have you got NFL? No, we have. Come on. This is a big club, big stadium. It really is. But I'm not filling the stadium just yet for Legends Nights.
It's the first I've seen you endorsing Beyonce and Lady Gaga at the Tottenham Stadium. That's a first.
At Mr. Cracknell, I'll put all the posters up, and I've got an absolute ton of nights coming up across the UK, Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland. Got Gary Mabbott and Michael Dawson out there as well. Glenn Hoddle in April. So I'll put all the posters up for the night so you can come along for a little bit of meet and greet as well and hear some stories. Terrible. The bloke interviewing them is absolutely terrible, but the legends themselves are just legends, aren't they? So, thank you for that, Rick. And I might even be off to Cyprus in April as well. Might be heading out to Cyprus as well, going international. So,
I tell you, listen, mate, we're looking forward to it. Of course, you can make sure.
Imagine being able to live abroad, Rick. Oh, that would be fantastic, wouldn't it? I'd love to live abroad one day.
Oh, I'll tell you what, you do it so well, you don't even notice. You really don't. I tell you. But honestly, thank you so much, guys. Before I do let you go, I just want to make a small announcement. It's going to be a big announcement in my life, a big change. But my second is due some point this week, so no pressure. It'll be all hands on deck. So you may hear the occasional odd little baby scream, or it could be from me trying to get a 5 minutes break from Last Word on Spurs, what this club might do to us. But I mean, you can't make the timing up where we are right now. That I always seem to do it at the right or wrong time. The first time I had our first child, Spurs went into the Super League and lost Mourinho on the same day. And now I'm in a situation where my second child is being born, and currently the manager is currently off absence, and the club feels like to some degree it's completely falling apart. But blame that on me and my wife's timing rather than Tottenham's.
Rick, you know the day that your second comes along, Antonio Conte's gone and Poch comes back, doesn't he? You know, and you're going to be in the maternity suite, aren't you?
Oh my God!
Mopping Mrs. Rick's brow, and all of a sudden the club's going to be making announcements left, right, and centre.
It's you know, it is quite naturally a team effort. Without her, this wouldn't be possible. And with all you boys, it wouldn't be possible. So look, on behalf of you guys, and I know she listens and watches, thank you so much for all of her support. Without her, it wouldn't be possible. So, guys, we're going to leave you with that. We are due to be back with you during the week for a Chelsea preview. That will still go ahead as things stand. Anything changes, I'll let you know. But look, from the wonderful Russ Williams, from the brilliant Chris Bavan, from the superb Mr. Cracknell, from all of you wonderful people wishing me lots of love and lots of luck. Thank you so much. And for these wonderful guys' contributions. Yes, Rick. We'll be back with you very soon. But from all of us here.
Rick, before you go, Emerson Sachs. Come on, baby number 2, Emerson Sachs.
I think I've got a chance.
You know it. I know it. Everyone knows it. Emerson Sachs. Come on.
I'm going to have a word in her ear now. That might be a goer. It might be a goer. It might be. From all of us here, please keep safe, keep well, and as always, come on, you Spurs.